Okay, I'm going to just kick us off because it's just after half now. So welcome to the final session of Eco Week 2024, and then to our last session today. So it's Nature for Wellbeing. Um, Firstly, my name is Antonia, and I am the Young Environmentalist Awards Project Officer. So you'll hear a little bit about that later on. But I'm just going to talk a tiny bit about ECO-UNESCO itself. So ECO-UNESCO was founded in 1986 by a group of young people, and our aim is to empower the young people who are involved with us to help protect the environment. ECO-UNESCO is proud to be one of UNESCO's affiliated clubs and also a Sustainable Development Goals ambassador. So that's why we have linked in Eco Week this year with SDG Week. And while you guys are there, if you want to just let us know where you're tuning in from, that'd be great, and how many of you guys are watching. So to bring in the speaker before I introduce dear fully. So we're going to be talking about all about SDG 3, so that's good health and well-being. You guys can see all the 17 SDGs there. So Darren is our Eco Choices coordinator, and she is going to talk all things about good health and well-being, especially within nature, and just exploring the importance of nature for our health and well-being. So Darren, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hello everyone, and happy Friday. I don't know where you're calling in from, but the sun is finally peeking out here after about 2 days of rain. So I know that's given me energy, and the fact that it's a Friday afternoon helps quite a lot as well. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, thank you, Antonia, for the wonderful introduction. So as she mentioned, I'm Antonia's colleague in ECO-UNESCO, and I'm just going to share my screen here. I won't be with you guys for long today, but hopefully we can cover a little bit about, honestly, my favorite topic, which is well-being and kind of how nature can help with that and stuff. So as Antonia mentioned already, I'm the Eco Choices Coordinator in ECO-UNESCO. So within the organization, we do loads of different types of work with loads of different types of groups, but mine in particular is one of our youth work programs. So what I mean about that when I say youth work programs is it's like usually done in an after school setting or sometimes weekends. And we'll do different activities with different young people who we call a voluntary participation. So it's not the same as me going into a school where young people have to be and they have to engage with this if I've been invited in. It's more young people choose to come in and be part of these programs. And the idea behind it is we work with young people and let them determine what they want the program to look like as well. Sometimes, I'll be perfectly honest, young people come in with absolutely no interest in the environment, who might not even necessarily be interested in wellness or anything like that. But it's something that we'll gradually get to over time as well. Because if you're coming in and you just want to hang out with friends, that's 100% fine. But let's think about how we can do that and how we can kind of come together and experience nature and the environment while we do it. So some of these activities we'll do like residentials in very remote rural places. Our most recent one was in Glendalough, which was absolutely beautiful, just being really connected and immersed in nature that way. But not only things like that, there's also shorter activities we can do. So whether that's walks, nature trails, kind of exploring urban biodiversity, which is really cool as well. And just kind of thinking about how that makes us feel and the impact that can have on us and our well-being as well. Excuse me, because it's something that's becoming really, really popular, I think, as well. Loads of research has been done on it, particularly since the pandemic, actually, which I know we're all trying to forget about and move on from. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, we were indoors so much, and I think it really highlighted for a lot of people how important nature is to us and green spaces are to us, and that benefit it has on how we feel, whether it's helping us feel a bit more relaxed, whether it's for health purposes. And it also kind of exposed people that don't have access to these green spaces too, and how that can have a negative impact on you too as well. So hopefully throughout the next 20-25 minutes or so, we can chat about kind of some of what that research says and also things that we can do to kind of connect with nature and make us feel more at peace and more part of it as well. So with me today, you'll see somewhere on the bottom of the screen, I have Kaylee Harris too. So Kaylee works with me on the Eco Choices program. So if you hear me calling on her or asking her to contribute at all, that's what it's about. I'm not picking on people in the group. I'd love you to participate in the chat, or if you feel comfortable, you can also take yourself off mute and chat as well. But I'm not going to call on anyone independently. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot, okay? But one thing I will start us off doing is because when we're talking about this connection with nature, it's very personal. I can't tell you how you feel in nature the same way you couldn't tell me. Everyone experiences it differently as well. So what I'll ask you to do is just think about your favorite place in nature. It can be anywhere. Nature's lots and lots of different places, lots of different things. But if you can think about your favorite, your own interpretation of it, and think about maybe if you can tell us where that spot is and how it makes you feel either when you're there or when you come home from being there or whatever it may be. So think about your favorite place in nature and how it makes you feel. And while we're waiting for things to come in the chat there, I can share mine with you. My personal favorite, and actually the picture on the slides gives it away. I absolutely love the woods. I love a good thick forest. And one of the reasons being is it's just so peaceful. And when there's a lot of tree cover around, even if there's a road pretty close by, it can kind of act as a barrier to that sound. You'll hear a lot of nature sounds in it too. So it makes me feel really at peace and really, really grounded as well. And it can also make me feel small, but in the best possible way when I look at like really old trees, really big trees. And I think about how long they've been there, all the things they've seen, their history, and just how durable and how resilient they are too. And you feel tiny in the context of that. Then I think as humans, we tend to assume that we have the rule of the roost, but it's not necessarily true. And it's just, it gives you a different respect. So yeah, I find peace, I find a sense of calm and just relax, especially in the woods. What about you, Antonia? Do you have any favorite places?
I actually don't think I realized this until probably around COVID, but I grew up around Dunleary, so it's probably been by the sea, and I don't think I appreciated it until COVID, and you were stuck within a 2 kilometer radius, and it was nice just being able to, I guess, go out, look at the sea, and then figure out that like you're actually tiny in comparison to the world sometimes because it's so vast. Yeah, and just like the noise of the water, it's just so relaxing and chilled. And Dunleary, especially on a sunny day, is a really like nice hub to be around. Everyone's going to coffee shops, like enjoying walks with their dogs. You're on the pier. We're going for sea swims. So it's just like actually embracing that nature that we have on our doorstep. So I think for me, it's probably the sea, being by the coast.
That's it. And the sea is so powerful as well, right? Like I feel like especially on because often when we're thinking about our favorite places in nature, we're picturing a very picturesque day and it's nice and
Mm,
sunny and it's nice and whatever. We don't get that many of them in Ireland, let's be honest. But yeah, like the sea, especially even on like kind of a bit of a wild day, it could be a
yeah.
bit windy or it could be anything, and you just see the force of it and how powerful nature is too. So it's yeah, it's that small feeling nearly, but I mean small is a positive emotion there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Like you're sort of taking it on board that like there is bigger, more powerful things out there like Mother Nature, and that we contribute to what's happening within Mother Nature as well. So
100%. Yeah. What about yourself, Kaylee? Oh, I don't know if Kaylee's connecting. That's
she
okay.
should
She
be
can
here.
she should be here, but she might have a connection issue. We can jump in when we come back. But yeah, if you can't think of one on the spot, that's okay. Feel free to pop it in the chat as I'm chatting through these things, and we'll make sure to get to it as well. Oh, Victoria says the garden there. Yeah, so gardens, I mean, they're complete zen, right? So you can make them what you want to make them, really, isn't it? So I live in Dublin. I know this background might be tricking you into thinking I'm in the wilderness in the mountains right now. It's very realistic, I know, but spoiler alert, it's actually not real. I'm at home in an apartment in Dublin, but I don't have a garden. I do have a balcony that I try and grow as much as I can on and things like that as well. So it's that connection and how that makes you feel. I see Kirsty says Glendalough as well. I think Glendalough is one of my favorite spots. I just mentioned it for the residential we went on there too. That it's a real, there's so much history to Glendalough too as well, right? That it's kind of awe-inspiring nearly, especially when you look out that view that's like over the lake and you can see the mountains and everything. It's really, really beautiful. Oh, and Kaylee is saying it's love doing walks at the beach, yeah, and just combing the beach for different rocks and shells and stuff. Because that's the thing, there's so many cool things in nature too that like it can be kind of awe-inspiring, and if you're creative at all, there's so much you can do with that as well. So really, really positive, I think. Um, so if we move on to the next one, this is Antonia's mentioned already. It is SDG week this week, but you've probably seen these before. If you're not familiar, that's okay. And these are essentially 17 goals called the SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, and that I came up with in 2015. And the idea being, if we can achieve all these, we live in this perfect world, right? As you can see, there's different ones associated with the environment there and various different things as well. But the one I was like most excited to see them add to it was SDG number 3. I'm pretty passionate about, which is good health and well-being. So when we're talking about things like the SDGs, oftentimes we're talking about like infrastructure and how we do these different consumeristic behaviors, things like this, and how we can tackle them. But they're all action based, and this is a problem that we need to solve. And so, which is true. Don't get me wrong, it is true. But I love that there's emphasis being put on, well, actually, our well-being. And a lot of what I do and a lot of what Kaylee does is very linked to that. It's very linked to, well, how can we make sure we're all okay and we're all thriving here as well with the planet? You know what I mean? It's not just a case of it being this problem that we have to fix. Let's live in it and let's appreciate it and let's love it as well. So once we do that, it will improve mental health. It will improve your well-being, both physical and emotional. So it's something that I'm really, really passionate about. And as I mentioned, there's loads of different research, particularly since the pandemic, that's gone into this. And when we're talking about the positive effects this has on people, it is not a new thing. There's a quote here as well. It's just talking about how we're basically programmed to connect with nature. We have been since the time of our ancestors. We need the earth to live. We come hand in hand. We are part of it. When we're talking about nature, we're talking about living things, and we are one of those living things. We are part of nature. So to act like we're separate from that is quite bizarre, really. And it's only something that's happened kind of over throughout generations. As you can see, this quote is even from 1984. So when we're talking about these impacts and these connections we have with nature and people paying attention to that, it is not a new phenomena. It's been more looked into, I would say, since the pandemic, but it's not new. Over generations, we've maybe found a bit of a disconnect. So that can come down to lots of different reasons. All you have to do is look around and you'll see more built up areas, you'll see urban sprawl and biodiversity loss. And sometimes we have that disconnect. And it can be a challenge, but this is kind of what we're looking at and why we're looking at the importance of that connection and that kind of emotional, meaningful connection there as well. And some of the studies I've come across have had really, really interesting highlights to different benefits it has. So I've got a bit of a summary here. If you can think of more that you've experienced yourself, please put it in the chat. I'd love to hear from you as well. But this is just a bit of a snapshot. So being out in nature improves your mood. So if you're maybe a little bit stressed, maybe you've got a bit of anxiety, you don't necessarily have to. Maybe you've just had a bit of a bad day. Being out in nature, in the natural environment, whether that's walking, cycling, swimming, whatever it may be, it's been proven to improve your mood and just make you release those endorphins, make you feel happier, make you feel calmer, like we were talking about earlier when we were reflecting how we feel in nature. It can reduce stress massively as well. So it comes down to self-regulation. And when we say we're reducing stress, we're talking about symptoms of anxiety, physical stress. Even being out in nature lowers your heart rate, which can sound funny if you're talking about physical activity in nature, but we're talking about the leftover effects of that. It can really balance your heart rate, which reduces stress as well. Some other things it does is helps you feel relaxed. So if we're talking about that, those very physical things like your heart rate, like your breathing, like your sense of calm, that is relaxation. And if you're anything like me and you've had a beautiful day outdoors, you'll sleep really, really well that night generally too. So it's just a way of your body regulating as well. It improves your physical health. So I know I'm talking a lot about well-being and that emotional connection here as well, but Also, your physical health, which we can't deny. When you're out in nature, it is usually a physical excursion. It's a physical activity. You're getting out, you're moving, and all these things just really, really benefit us. And good for the planet. So when we're talking about this, and all the studies I was looking at actually have showed that the more time we spend in nature, it increases our feelings of connection with nature. And basically, when people feel a bond with nature, they often take better care of it. So they engage in more environmentally friendly practices. They'll be more passionate about their local natural spots. They'll kind of take care of them like that as well. Maybe get encouraged into whether it's gardening or doing something like this as well. So connecting with it will also create this emotional bond, not just within ourselves, but between ourselves and the natural environment as well, which is really, really important. I'm seeing some stuff come up in the chat there as well. And Kirsty is saying helps you meditate easier. And I well believe that, Kirsty. There's a lot of practices now at the moment that is like going outside and just experiencing outdoors. And even like outdoor yoga, I know has gone really, really popular as well. So it's all of these different things that will help us feel connected. And what you're talking about when you're meditating, you're breathing nice and easy, you're relaxing, it's a sense of calm. It's all of these things that we were saying nature can provide for us as well. And just to highlight too that when we're talking about being out in nature, I think one of the most common things I come across when I talk to people about this, when I talk about the positive impacts nature has on our physical and mental well-being, people just say, well, I don't have time. I don't have time for that. And I don't know if you've heard the expression before. I imagine you have, but that whole expression of just stop and smell the roses, that is essentially what we're talking about here. We're talking about stopping and appreciating nature, because when I'm talking about these benefits, most of these studies have shown that we start to feel the impacts of these nature related connections after just 10 minutes of being in nature. So what I'm not talking about, as much as it's wonderful if you can go out and spend a day in the mountains, it'll be gorgeous and you'll have a wonderful time. But if you are pressed for time, if you have a busy schedule, after just 10 minutes, you start feeling the impacts of this. So I think we can all try and carve that out a few times a week just to check in with ourselves and the planet too. So while we're there, I'm aware I'm kind of running out of time here, but while we're there, what I want to do is maybe talk about some ways we can connect nature. So we know the benefits now. What can we do to create that connection, to create that relationship with the natural environment? And one of the most obvious ones, I guess, is nature walks. And this is literally as it says on the tin, it's getting out in nature. The more secluded, the better. I know not everybody has access to that as well, but you can find nature no matter where you go. I mentioned at the start of this that we do some urban nature trails sometimes, exploring parks and things like that around the city. You can look at places that public transport is available. Maybe it can get you to a close by nature park or something like that. But it's just physically getting out and getting into nature is one of the most important things you can do. And also noticing nature. So as I mentioned, not everybody has access to these wonderful, vast green spaces like where I am joining in from today. Not everyone has that on their doorstep. And we have to acknowledge that, we have to recognize that. But just because I'm not actually out in the middle of mountains here now, I'm actually in a city, does not mean nature is not around me. And one of the ways we can go about this is just by stopping and smelling the roses, as I mentioned. So whether you're walking to school or walking to your friend's house, it's making that conscious effort to notice nature. It could be maybe someone has lovely flowers on their balcony that you're walking by that you've noticed. Maybe you'll see that one accidental flower growing between cracks in pavement on a pathway or something like that, and you'll just notice the resilience of it and how strong nature is. And maybe you can disconnect, and instead of tuning into the sounds of traffic, maybe you can tune into the sounds of birds, which tend to be everywhere anyhow. So these are the types of things we can do. We're consciously paying attention to nature in our everyday lives where we're going. There's things like, and somebody mentioned in the chat there a few minutes ago about their garden being their favorite nature spot, and this is it. It's so beneficial to us as well. If you're lucky enough to have a garden, I'd encourage you to spend as much time as you can in it. If you don't have a garden, that's okay too, because we can also do things like indoor planting, and it's not only just limited to that. As much as it is wonderful to be able to do things like grow bee-friendly flowers, and you have this real sensory connection to them as well. They're almost like perfumes. But you can also do things like growing food, and I guarantee you it will be the nicest lettuce or tomato or whatever it is you've grown. It'll be the nicest you've ever had because you've grown it yourself, and it just strengthens that connection piece with nature there as well. It doesn't have to be planting. Maybe that's not your thing. Maybe you find it too stressful, or there's not enough of an immediate access point to that. But it can be maybe creating a nature table or something. So maybe when you're going out and you're noticing nature on your walk, maybe you want to take some nature home with you. This time of year is really beautiful for things like that. I know we tend to be almost disappointed when the autumn comes because the warm weather goes and the darker evenings come in. But it is one of the most beautiful times of year in terms of season change and things like that. When we're doing things like collecting pieces of nature, so I'm talking about collecting leaves, stuff like that, we don't ever want to pick them from the tree because remember, we want to notice nature. We don't want to disrupt nature. So when we see those beautiful flowers on someone's balcony as you're walking to school, you probably don't want to pick people's flowers off their balcony. We can notice them. Same goes for the trees as well. We don't want to disrupt them. We're going to leave the leaves alone. But at this time of year, they'll turn into gorgeous colors. They'll drop. Once it's on the ground, it's fair game. You can pick those up. You can create wonderful art pieces. Maybe you don't want it to be an art piece. Maybe you just want a bowl or a tabletop of some of your favorite leaves. Because on that as well, there's beach combing as well, which is one of the more creative, I would say, creative potential actions we can do. When you go onto a beach, there's so many interesting objects, whether they be shells or rocks or whatever they may be, that you can really, really get creative. Or sometimes they just speak to you. And I'm sure everyone has done it at some point. Maybe it was when you were younger, maybe you still do it now. But like you'll find something like a shell or an interesting stone on a beach that just speaks to you. You can't explain why it does. You just find it really cool and you really want to bring it home with you. And it's kind of those types of things. They're all everyday nature connections. And it's just taking the time to notice and appreciate those things as well. And the last tip I have here is connecting with animals too. So we've seen that if we're going to use domesticated animals, right, because that's an easy example to use because there's lots said about them, and that connection that they can bring a sense of calm. A lot of the time, if people are experiencing maybe loneliness or maybe they've got some other difficulties or challenges, it's connecting with a pet can be really, really beneficial. We've seen that as well, but it doesn't just have to be domesticated animals. I mentioned a while ago, like the listening to bird song. They're wild and free. We're not going to go up and we're not going to pet any of these birds that are around. But what we will do is we'll notice them and we'll appreciate them. And you can also do that by watching nature. So maybe you're in an apartment without a balcony or anything like that, but maybe you like to look out the window and see what you can spot while you're there as well. And it's about kind of noting how you feel before and after it. And for you, it will be different. For me, it will be different. For everyone, it's different. But often you'll see that positive mood change once we've noticed nature, once we've looked at it and appreciated it as well. I'm aware all of these things, or most of these things, are outdoor activities, but you'll be glad to know, especially us exposed to the Irish weather, where it's not always possible to go outside. It's not always possible to go for walks when it's really dark. But even doing things like watching nature documentaries, although the impacts aren't as strong as they are as physically going out and experiencing it, but we can still get some of those benefits by simply sitting down and watching a nature documentary and learning about nature, because it creates that connection, that relationship between us and nature when we learn about it. It's probably why we're all so obsessed with David Attenborough, to be honest, because we just feel like he's someone we're connected with, and we have that relationship with. He teaches us so much. So doing things like that, like those, if it's particularly bad weather or maybe you can't get out for whatever reason, that can have a really positive impact on it as well. If there's anything else that you think we could do as well, please feel free to pop it in the chat. I see Victoria has one here saying about planting vegetables and planting trees and flowers. Amazing. We can't get a deeper connection to well, life really when we're talking about nature than watching something grow, especially if it's from seed, and watching it mature, produce fruit, do these things as well. It's such a raw, I think, nearly primal connection and instinct there as well. That's really, really beautiful. Also playing games outside, absolutely. So if anyone here is interested in like sports clubs or anything like that, a lot of that is outdoors. And it's all about that experience as well. You're going to be, even if it's a football pitch that you're saying there's not too many flowers or whatever around, but you are outside, you're experiencing the natural environment as well. And you're also getting physical activity in there too, which is super important. Oh, Kirsty has an amazing one here too, saying helping neighbours with gardening or in your youth centre. Really, really good one, Kirsty. And thank you so much for that, because maybe you do have access to garden, maybe you don't, but maybe you've got neighbours that they could be older neighbours, they could be younger neighbours, it could be anything, that maybe they're interested in gardening and don't know where to start. So it could be something that you do together, and that really establishes a sense of community then too, right? So it's all about making those connections, not just with the natural environment there, but also your community and your neighbours, which is really, really important. And you mentioned the youth centres as well. So like a lot of you, I know a lot of you are coming in from schools and things like that as well, but any youth services or youth centres in your area too, you can always drop into them and ask about, could you set up an eco club or a gardening club or an outdoor walking club or something like that? And I'm sure they'd be delighted to hear from me as young people coming in and asking about that. And you can also email us too. I'll make sure to pop my email into the chat here too. If you are interested in setting up some kind of a club or something in your local community, just get in touch with us and we can 100% help you out with getting that established. I know I'm nearly out of time, but before I move on, there's something super important I want to mention, and that is the Young Environmentalist Awards. So ECO-UNESCO has been running these for about 25 years, really, really long time. But basically what it is there's all these different categories in YEA. It's 100% free to enter. You can enter whether it's with your school, whether it's with your youth group, or even if there's a group of friends of you together that want to come together and do a project, you can 100% do that. What you do is you just log on to yea.ie. You can register now. I think submissions don't have to be done till January-ish. I'm looking at Antonia here to get a nod or a shake of the head.
The submission deadline is 12th of Feb.
12th of Feb, perfect. Loads and loads of time, right? Yeah. So there's loads of categories in the YEA, but I am obsessed with one of them, as you might have noticed, and that's the eco health and wellbeing category. The things that we were talking about today, that nature connection, are definitely things that you can do for a YEA. We're talking about the importance of connections. Basically, it's just documenting that and highlighting it with your friends, with your youth group, with your school, whatever it may be. So just to give you a couple of examples, I know Kaylee and I have worked on a few different projects with Eco Choices throughout the years here. So just to give you an idea, if you see the top picture on the top row, actually, that's actually a new space. That's going to be this year's project, and it is beautiful. We love to see grass growing wild, and we love to see all that as well. It needs to be protected too. We're going to turn this, or at least some of this, into a bit of a gardening spot and maybe growing some vegetables there. We look at some winter roots we can grow. We might do it up and do a little bit of painting, maybe make a little bench to sit in it so we can sit and appreciate nature. That's an example of somewhere that you're looking at that's a wild space, absolutely gorgeous. And how do we appreciate that, and how do we savor that? That in itself is a YEA project, and a very good one, if I do say so myself. Because if you look at on the second row, the first two photos you can see there, that's actually from Ronanstown Youth Service. So when we're talking about experiencing nature, a lot of the time people think, oh, well, I live in a very urban environment. How can I do anything about nature and the natural environment? I promise you, it might be a little bit more challenging, but it's definitely accessible to you. So in Ronanstown, it's very built up. It's a very urban environment, but the young people there really wanted to create a bit of a green space for them, and they wanted to create a bit of a sensory garden, a bit of a fairy garden, something that was accessible to the community in there. And they did it, and they did it wonderfully. So you can see the different fairy decorations on the trees there. So they created all of them themselves, and they really loved it. They really loved being engaged in it. It could be the middle of winter, and it didn't matter. They'd come out and they'd hang out in that garden. They also decorated all these pots themselves. You can see in the second picture as well, and did planting projects over the summer, just to maintain it and really get their hands dirty and feel the soil and see the energy you produce when you're doing things like planting as well. And it's just so impactful, and I know they loved it too. And beside that, you can see a photo of a bug hotel, which are really fun to make and really cool. I don't know if anyone here likes bugs, but whether you do or whether you don't, I promise you'll find it fascinating as well. But they're all really good parts of creating these spaces in urban environments and green spaces in urban environments that we don't necessarily have easy access to, right? But that doesn't mean it's not accessible to us, and they make really, really wonderful projects too. You'll see we've also done things like litter cleans. So this was like one part of a bigger project, which was all about like going out and experiencing nature and kind of how you can help nature, how you can be part of it. And one of the things this group identified was this is out at Sandymount Beach, and there's a lovely park beside Sandymount Beach and all that as well. Unfortunately, there is a lot of litter that gathers there. So the young people wanted to enjoy these walks more. So they identified that we'd like to clean up the area so we can appreciate it more. And that's what they did. That was a Sunday, I think, and probably around February that they were out in the cold. But they really, really enjoyed it. And as you can see, it was a big group of people as well. Just had a lot of fun together and stuff like that. The last example I'll give you is the top corner. You can just see it's people out and experiencing nature. And maybe this can link back into what I said about maybe you'd like to establish your own eco club. When we're talking about things like this, you could have with your youth group just say, every Saturday we go on nature walks and we do it together and we talk, and maybe we'll do a little nature activity, or maybe we'll like keep a nature journal, and just tracking that and like organizing this social club. It's something you can do with your friends, with your community, with your school, whatever it may be. And it's just creating this club and this environment for people to actually go and experience nature together. There's some examples. If you can think of other things you might be able to do, feel free to pop them in the chat. But I also 100% understand if you're all sitting there thinking, actually, I'm going to enter YEA this year, so I don't want to tell anybody about my brilliant project idea. I'm going to keep it to myself. That's 100% fine as well. But what I will do is I will pop my email into the chat here as well if you're interested in setting up your own local eco clubs, or if you want just more advice. I referenced some research in the presentation there as well. So if you want access to that research, I am more than happy to share it on with you as well. But that's kind of the end of my presentation. Oh, I went 2 minutes over, Antonia. I'm sorry. So I did it as fast as I could. But I'm happy to stay on though if anybody has any questions or anything like that, or even any thoughts or any ideas.
We had one from a teacher though. Does ECO-UNESCO have any resources that can help engage students in nature and highlighting the value of nature for us?
Really good question. So we have a few different resources. There's one's Nature in the Park, and we're actually just finalizing an Eco Choices resource at the moment as well. But if you access our website, we'll have our current resources, the ones that are readily available there at the moment, but there are more in progress as well. So do just get in touch that we can send you on some different nature-based activities and things like that.
Cool. And we did have one saying that they live in a city, so they don't have much access to green spaces. But I think you covered a good bit of that, of just like trying to find a small connection to nature wherever you can.
That's exactly it. And look, it's common, and I 100% understand it. As I said, I live in a city as well. It can be harder to find it. Do you know what I mean? But it's still there. Nature is absolutely everywhere. We just have to maybe look a little bit closer for it. But it is there. So, but do get in touch if you're living in your city and you're thinking about YEA or a nature project. Let me know, and I can give you a hand and come up with some ideas if you need it.
Cool. I'm gonna share my screen now and take over from Darren. So thank you so much, Darren. It's quite nice to see, just because I live in Dublin as well, but obviously I live on the coast, so I have probably more access to nature in parts where I live, so it's easier to get to the mountains and stuff like that. But it's nice just like showing people that potentially, even if they live in a really urbanized area, that they just need to basically wake up and smell the roses and find those little snippets of nature around them, and then just ground themselves back into that connection, and also just highlight the importance of nature for us. So thank you so much. I'm just going to run through a tiny bit about ECO-UNESCO. So Darren did a great job in explaining YEA for me. So if you guys do want to get involved, it's fully free of charge. and registrations are open now. And then we also have our workshops. So our workshops can be online or in person, depending on where you are. They can come out to the school or come out to any organisations and deliver workshops for you. They have a vast range of workshops, so I'm not even going to start by telling you knowing where to start with them. It's all on our website though, so it's easier to see there. And just get in contact with them at bookings@eco-unesco.ie. And then our youth groups. So Darren touched a tiny bit about her eco choices. So her and Kaylee do a vast amount of work with regards to all different ages and just even bringing them out to nature. And I've only been part of the company for a short time, and I've known them to go on a lot of different excursions over the summer. And sometimes I'm jealous that I can't go to, but it's just really nice to see that they are like opening up that space for younger people to get involved and get engaged and just be more mindful and aware of your surroundings. Then we have our Youth Climate Justice Programme, so they're currently running as well. So that's more of like an advocate program, getting your voice heard, advocating, and then lobbying against like politicians, TDs. And then we have our Youth for Sustainable Development program as well. So these are all free of charge. The YSD program, so Youth for Sustainable Development, that is 12-week course, and it's all to do with the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals, and that can be either online or in person. So the in-person sessions are Maynooth, Drogheda, Galway, and Dublin. And I think that's everything for me. But if you guys do have any feedback, I've pinned it in the chat, and I know Darren's also popped in her email, so get in contact with us. Eco Week is done. Woo! Eco Week 2024. Thank you so much. I think a few of you guys have tuned in for a lot of the sessions, so thank you so much. And I hope that even if you take away one little bit of information from this week, that's all that we're looking for. And just for you guys to get involved in any form of environmental education, sustainability, or just even mindfulness and your well-being. So thank you so much. If you guys do have any further questions, you can get in contact with us at info@eco-unesco.ie or Darren herself directly. She's popped that in. So the chats should still be available, or myself. So it's easiest at yea@eco-unesco.ie. Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend and that the sun stays shining for a tiny bit. Anyway, in Dublin right now, it's touch and go, but fingers crossed. And enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.